not know if it's even possible to read an 8-book series in 7 days, but I'm gonna try. Ever since I read the Court of Thorns and Roses series, I've been really wanting to read Sarah J. Maas's other series, Throne of Glass. This is an 8-book series, and for no other reason than masochism, I'm going to attempt to read the entire series in 7 days. But before we get into Throne of Glass, let's talk about 2 standalone books that won't take you over 100 hours to read. And those 2 books are Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez and The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. And both these books are my this month's Book of the Month picks. I get so excited every single month when my Book of the Month box comes in, but I think this is my favorite books that I've ever received with my Book of the Month subscription. And if you're not familiar with Book of the Month, they are a super popular online book service for readers. Their team vets hundreds of books every single month and then gives you a curated selection to choose from. I love this because I discover books that I would have never found, never read, never known about without Book of the Month. And Book of the Month has kindly sponsored today's video. And Book of the Month has launched audiobooks, which is so exciting. I'm a big audiobook girly. So every single month you can choose a hardcover or an audiobook. And their app is one of my favorite things ever. You can also rate and review the books on the app. You can participate in reading challenges. You can check out the audiobooks there. And you can use my code PASTEL to get your first book for $5. That is just so crazy. That's like a crazy price for any book ever, let alone a new release hardcover. So I highly recommend checking out Book of the Month. You can click the link in my description to get started. And again, don't forget to use my code PASTEL to get your first new release hardcover for just $5. Okay, let's get back to Throne of Glass and talk about the reading order for the series. The Throne of Glass series has 7 main books, but then there is a prequel called The Assassin's Blade. I actually already read The Assassin's Blade in my first video of 2024, which is gonna make this challenge of trying to read this whole series in 1 week a little bit easier because we've already got 1 book out of the way. There is a lot of debate on the reading order of this series. You can either read it first as the prequel, or you can read it 4th after Heir of Fire. I watched like 10 billion videos on the pros and cons of each reading order before deciding to read it first. I think reading it first is great if you're somebody who wants to be surprised by the plot. Everything you read is going to be a surprise because it's the first time you're reading about these events. And that's ultimately why I decided to read The Assassin's Blade first, versus if you decide to read The Assassin's Blade 4th, by that point in the series, you've already heard about some of the events in this book. So the events won't be a surprise, but I've heard that it's potentially the more emotional way to read this series. So you'll go into this book already emotionally invested. It's kind of like you're working backwards. Like you're like, I know about Selena in present day. Let's go back and find out her backstory, how she became who she is. The Assassin's Blade, I ended up giving it 4.25 stars. It's 5 short stories, which I think is so fun. I don't know if I've ever read a book of short stories. I think maybe I have once. So I love that it's quite a unique reading experience. And Selena's character is so cool. She's so badass. She's an assassin, if you don't know. And I just think that's epic. A lot of these short stories are her going on missions and doing assassin things. So yeah, I just think it's really cool to like learn about her job and a lot about who she is. I think she's definitely a character with flaws, which I appreciate. With that, let's move on to Throne of Glass, which I'm currently in the middle of. I am currently on page 295. I have right around 100 pages left. I am really liking this book so far. The premise of this book is so cool. Basically, Selena is in this competition, I guess is how I'll say it without giving spoilers. And yeah, I just think the competition is really cool. It's really cool that there's like rounds to the competition. It's like fun to see what each round is gonna be, and then also to see her other competitors because they're all very different. Okay, let's finish this book. I finished the book. I think I would say 4.5 stars for this one. I 1000% see this being a 5-star series overall. I feel like I can't say 5 stars yet for this first book. I think in this book we start to get like a really good sense of the world. It feels like it's gonna be such a huge, expansive world. I don't know if you guys can see the map of the world, but there's literally like 5,000 places listed on here. So I'm like, oh my gosh, are we gonna go to all of these like cities and places? That's so cool. It's also crazy that she wrote this book when she was 16. Like, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. So it's also kind of cool having already read the ACOTAR series, which, when did she write ACOTAR? It says she wrote ACOTAR when she was 23, so honestly she was still so young. But I just looked up when Kingdom of Ash was published, which is the last book in the series, and that was published in 2018, so she would have been 32 when the book is published. So just now to be like going into a series where the first one she wrote when she was 16, the last one came out when she was 32, like what a span of time. I'm sure I'll see how her writing progresses as I keep reading the books. Let's see how much of Crown of Midnight I can get through today. Page 100 check-in. Selena is definitely towing a very dangerous line in this book with the king, which probably means nothing to you if you haven't read the series, but just know I am stressed for Selena, and I feel like everything's gonna come crashing down for her, potentially sooner rather than later. I am on page 159, and I'm glad I read Assassin's Blade first. There's definitely a lot of references to Assassin's Blade, and I think it's really cool to understand them. I also feel like I have a really good understanding of her character, and I'm curious if I would have had that same understanding if I didn't read Assassin's Blade first. It is literally so gloomy outside, which I guess is kind of perfect weather for reading. My goal today is to finish Crown of Midnight. I'm a little less than halfway through, but I think I can do it. Just made it to part 2, The Queen's Arrow. I just finished chapter 32, and holy moly, all I feel is pain. It wasn't just like one bad thing happened, just everything came crashing down all at once. And like Selena had just been through so much, I just want her to be happy. Oh my gosh, you guys, I have so much to tell you. So I didn't finish Crown of Midnight last night, but I did finish it this morning. Holy moly, it was so good. The ending was crazy. The ending was crazy. My favorite thing about the ACOTAR series is she just has such incredible endings in those books. They all are just so action-packed. And we get a little bit of that in the Assassin's Blade, like a surprising ending, but in Crown of Midnight, we really get like so much. In the end, I'm like processing everything. Anyway, I think this is the first book in the series so far that I'm gonna give 5 stars. So good. And then as soon as I finished this book, like 3 minutes ago, I looked up a Reddit thread that was a Crown of Midnight spoiler discussion thread. Like just spoilers for Crown of Midnight, right? And everyone's like saying their thoughts, and it's like so interesting to hear what everyone else thought about the whole book. And then someone said that they had blank spoiled for them, and they say like what was spoiled for them, which just in turn spoiled it for me. Why would you say that? It's just one detail. There's so much I don't know, and even the part that's spoiled, I have no idea how we're gonna get to that, but it just sucks. Anyway, I'm gonna get dressed, and then let's go to the bookstore and buy the next book. I've done quite a bit of reading today. I am on page 178. Loving this book. Also, the spoiler that I found out yesterday turned out not to be as big of a spoiler as I thought, which I'm very happy about. This book is quite unique compared to the rest of the books because we get multiple third POVs, which is really fun. I used to be kind of a third POV hater. Well, that's not true. Maybe hater is too strong of a word. I just have always usually preferred first POV because you get to really get in the character's head. But this series is making me really appreciate third POV. I think it's especially cool in fantasy and in a big series because you get like a really big picture of the plot and the world and all the characters, because you can bounce around between what characters you're following so much easier. There's definitely certain characters, POVs, that I care about more. Like I think I could be in Selena's POV 80% of the time and be happy, but it's still very cool that we're now following so many characters because there's just so many side plots going on. I've done so much reading. I stayed up so late last night, and then it's currently 4 p.m. and I've been reading just the entire day, and I'm on page 497. I'm almost done. I have like 70 pages left. That's how you know I'm obsessed with a book, when I just cannot put it down. Last night I went to the grocery store, and the whole time I was at the grocery store I was like, I just want to get through this grocery shopping so fast so I can go home and read. Like anytime I'm not reading, I just want to be reading. I am so severely in the obsessed stage. Anyway, I am sitting outside this like coffee shop slash grocery store, and I think I'm gonna go sit there and read. Let's go in. I finished the book. It was so good. It was so freaking good. I feel like each book in the series just gets better and better. And my favorite thing about this book, without spoiling anything, we meet a new character. Well, we actually meet many new characters in this book, but this particular character strikes up a friendship with Selena, and it's my favorite thing ever. I love this new character so freaking much, and I hope we get a lot of them in the next book. I'm scared they won't be in Queen of Shadows very much, but we'll see. Also, how big is this book? 630 pages. One thing I did not think about all when I set out on this challenge of like trying to read as many books in the series as I can in a week is the fact that they get thicker and thicker as they go. If you couldn't tell by now, I'm definitely not gonna finish the series in this week, but I'm for sure gonna finish the entire series in this video, and I hope I can finish this book this weekend. I think I'm gonna stop reading for today because it's Danny's birthday. We're going out to dinner, and we're probably gonna do some other birthday things this weekend, so yeah, not sure how much reading I'm gonna get to over the next 2 days, but I literally am on the edge of my seat, so I'm definitely gonna read at least some. I will probably see you guys on Monday after the birthday weekends. Over the weekend, I finished Queen of Shadows, which I did not expect to do. Like, reading this entire book in basically like 2 days is a little bit crazy, even for me. Outside of doing like one evening birthday activity with Danny, I pretty much just read the entire weekend. I did nothing else. I got so obsessed. And yeah, if you couldn't guess, this one's 5 stars. The thing that made me obsessed with reading this book is the romance. It's definitely a romance subplot, and I feel like this book was like a tease in the romance department. Like Sarah J Maas was like sprinkling breadcrumbs for us, and I was eating them up. I was like, I want more. Honestly, the subtler the romance subplot is, the more I crave it. And then what's also really cool about this book is in Heir, like I said, is when we start to get like a bunch of different characters and their POVs, and we have that in this book as well, but we actually start to see the different characters cross paths, which is really cool. I also so far have not been saying any names of any of the characters or my opinions on any of them just because spoilers, but I kind of want to say my very general opinion on the main characters. These are characters you meet in Throne of Glass. First up, let's talk about Kale. I hope I'm saying his name right. I really like Kale. He can definitely be a flawed character, and him and Selena can definitely butt heads sometimes, but I feel like he always comes from a place of really good intentions. I feel like he's really loyal, which I love. And I also think in this book specifically, he like really comes into his own, which I think is cool, because in Throne of Glass I felt like he was a little one-dimensional, so just to see how much his character has grown and evolved over the series is quite cool. And then Dorian, I love Dorian. I adore him, and I hope we get to see him way more in the coming books. I feel like Queen of Shadows set him up to potentially have his own like really strong fantasy subplot. And then Selena, always love Selena. She's great. She's also can be a flawed character at times, but I appreciate that. I think she will always fight to do the right thing, even if it means putting herself at danger. She will always fight for her friends, and yeah, she's just such a badass character. I love her. Let's do a 7-day recap because we finished. Now the 7 days are complete. Yesterday, Sunday, was the 7th day of this challenge. I finished Throne of Glass. I read Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, and Queen of Shadows. I don't know how many pages that is, but I'll put it on the screen. I feel like it's a lot. Definitely way more books than I would typically read in a week. So now that our 7 days are over, I'm still gonna finish the series in this video, but at a more leisurely, normal pace. It's time to tandem read Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms. If you're not familiar with the tandem read, basically my understanding is that Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms take place during the same timeline, but they're told by different characters' third POVs. So someone came up with the tandem read where you alternate chapters between the two books. So you're progressing through the timeline at the same time in both books. So this will be a very unique reading experience. I've never done something like this before. Time to look up the tandem read. Okay, first up is the first 5 chapters of Empire of Storms and then 1 chapter of Tower of Dawn. I'm on page 112 of Empire of Storms and 52 of Tower of Dawn. I think the tandem read definitely makes sense, not just because of the timeline thing, but also because I think personally, I'm way more interested in the characters in Empire of Storms than Tower of Dawn. I mean, I like all the characters, but I think if I read this one all the way through, then this one all the way through, I'd be like a little less interested in this book. So just going back and forth helps break it up if you do have more of a favorite character that you like to follow. What's also cool about this is we have like fully really explored the world at this point, and the characters in this book are in a completely different country than the characters in this book. So we're also like bouncing around to different areas of the world, which is very fun. I am like, I don't even know what percentage to the tandem read, to be honest. Definitely not halfway yet, but I think getting close-ish to halfway. I think these 2 books are moving the slowest for me so far out of all the books I've read in the series. And I think the reason why is it feels like we're in a time with the plot of waiting for the next thing to come, preparing for, I think, a pretty imminent war, strategizing, trying to get allies, getting information, and it's still interesting, but I think the other books in the series just were like action-packed, had like big plot reveals. I also think because it's a tandem read and I'm reading both at once, it feels like I'm making such slow progress. Even though I'm making, I think, good progress, I'm just making a little bit in this one and a little bit in that one, versus if it was one book, I would be like, oh, I'm definitely almost done with it or halfway done or whatever. So I don't know, the tandem read is just like tricking my brain into thinking I've read less than I have. Hello. To be honest, it's a few weeks later. I was just really struggling with these 2. I feel like they were just moving so slow for me, and then I was like, you know what? Maybe I should take a pause. Maybe I'm just not in the mood for fantasy right now, and I'd rather read something when I'm 100% in the mood for it than like force reading it and not enjoying it. So I took a little pause from this series a few weeks ago, read some cute romances just to break it up, and then a few days ago got back into the tandem read, and I'm glad I took that pause because I'm loving it way more now. If we look at our tandem reading order, I'm on chapter 41 of Empire of Storms, which is pretty halfway through. Empire of Storms, I also feel like the plot just like really picked up in the last few chapters. A ton of action happened. There's also a lot of progress with the romance, which made me really happy. And then Tower of Dawn, nothing's like really changed much with like the plot or the pacing, but somebody commented that this book is like much more of like a slower moving love story. And I don't know why, but just like reading that kind of shifted my perspective, because I feel like I went into this thinking it was gonna be like this fast-paced fantasy like the other books, and it's actually like different from the other books in kind of a cool way. I am so close to being done with the tandem read, which feels so bittersweet because I'm loving it now. I think I have like 4 chapters left here and then 10 chapters left here. And in Empire of Storms, we have been finding out the most insane information just like repeatedly. Like the last few chapters have been crazy, and I just paused on a sentence I never saw coming in 100 million years. I finished both books yesterday. For Empire of Storms, I'm gonna say 4.25 stars just because it did feel slow in the first half to me, but the ending was so amazing. If I could give the ending 6 stars, I would. So much throughout the story tied in together. Things that I didn't even know were like loose ends or needed to be tied in did. And then Tower of Dawn, I'm gonna say 3.75 stars, again because I thought the first like 2/3 moved pretty slow. The romance was really sweet, and it was cool that this book takes place in a kingdom that we hadn't seen or experienced before in any of the other books. There's also a character named Nesrin in this book who's like a pretty decent part of the book, and I don't know why, I just don't care that much about her. Like I like her, but I don't feel like a deep connection to her, so her parts were a little less interesting to me. Also, can we take a second to appreciate how beautiful all these books look next to each other? I'm a little intimidated for two reasons. Number one, because this book is so thick. I'm very certain that when I read it, this will officially be the longest book I've ever read. It is 984 pages. That's crazy. And then the other reason I'm kind of intimidated is I'm scared something sad is gonna happen in this book. This book is probably gonna have lots of like war, fighting, and you know, with like fighting and war, you could have sad, hard things happen. So I'm scared. But then the other part of me is like, Sarah J. Maas wouldn't do that to me, right? I just hit page 100 and I'm really liking it so far. I just hit page 288, chapter 34. Still have so much left, but I'm loving this book so much. I've talked about before in past books that there's a lot of different characters and side plots, and sometimes I'm more interested in some characters more than others, but right now I feel equally invested in every character's story, which is a great feeling. So much progress has been made. I'm on page 629, so I'm like 70-ish% of the way through the book. And I wanted to talk about the female main characters. I saw this TikTok the other day of someone saying they really wanted fantasy book recs where the female main characters are not the warrior type. And something that I think is so great about this series is we have so many main characters. So I feel like there is somebody for everyone, like whatever kind of character you traditionally like in fantasy books. And specifically with the female main characters, we have the more warrior types, but then we also have the non-warrior types in Irene and Elide. They're very much like not fighters, not physically strong. They're not going on the battlefield, that's for sure. But they also have their own strengths in other ways. And I think that's really cool because if I was in a fantasy book, you would not catch me fighting. I would be a hindrance. I would not be helpful. So it's just cool to see, like, if I was in a fantasy world, maybe I could be like Irene or Elide. Like maybe I could fit in and still be just as helpful as the warrior types. Especially Elide, she's so smart and she really knows how to use the fact that she looks very unassuming and looks almost weak in a way. She uses that to her advantage to catch people off guard. And I think that's really, really cool and just so cunning of her. So I love Elide. She's one of my favorite characters. Manon is also one of my favorite characters. When we first got introduced to her in the series, I didn't really care about her that much. I just felt very neutral about her, but now I love her so much. I think she's such an interesting character, so unique, and I love her romance, especially in this book. We're getting a lot of Manon's romance, and the male character that is her love interest was just so unexpected to me. Like I never would have paired Manon with this person, so I just think their relationship is really interesting because it's such a unique dynamic and like unique pairing, and that's so cool to me, and I'm just like, every time they have a scene together. Page 666, very devil-like. Anyway, we're getting a scene where Elide and Irene are like really interacting, and I love that. Our two non-warrior queens. Makes me so happy. I finished the book. I actually don't know how long it took me to read. I started Kingdom of Ash exactly 7 days ago, so it took me 1 week to read the last one. For this one, I think I'm gonna say 4 stars, which might be like a slightly controversial rating because I feel like every single person ever has given this book 5 stars. I really liked it. I feel like the book accomplished what it needed to accomplish. I don't know, I was thinking more about the books in the series that I gave 5 stars, which were these 3 books in the middle of the series, and I think why I just like absolutely devoured these, obsessed with them, gave them 5 stars is because I loved the plots in these books. I think the characters were fully like in the middle of their journey. I think they were really discovering themselves, finding themselves, especially Selena. We were meeting lots of new characters. We were exploring the continent. My favorite romance ever in this series starts in these books. So I think I just like really emotionally connected with where the characters were at in their journey. journey at this time. As you guys saw when I read these books, I read them so fast. And then in this book, I feel like it feels a little more like an epilogue book to me, like the characters are acting out of duty and responsibility to end the war, tie up all the loose ends. And again, like I don't think this book could have been written any differently, but I don't think I was like as obsessed with this book and where the characters are at in their journey, even though we obviously needed everything to happen for the series to end. If I had to choose a favorite book in the series, it would be Heir of Fire. I love Celaena's journey in this book. I also feel like I'm gonna really always look fondly on The Assassin's Blade and Throne of Glass. These weren't 5 stars, but they just had such like unique plots, and we were really fully getting Celaena's like assassin storyline, which I think was like really fun and unique. Tower of Dawn was my least favorite just because I thought it moved so slow, but it was still very cute. And I actually added up my star rating for every single book and then divided by 8, and my average star rating for the whole series is 4.5 stars. But literally some of these I was so obsessed with. I think if these last 3 books had been higher ratings for me, it would be a 5-star series. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video of me reading the entire Throne of Glass series. I'm now gonna take a bit of a giant series break, but then I do want to read Crescent City at some point. And I'd also love to hear all of y'all's thoughts on Throne of Glass. If you want to say like spoiler thoughts, just put a little spoiler warning. I would love to like chat about everything that happened in this series. All right, and with that, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.